I'm somebody that doesn't like crowds except when I'm preaching. Then I love a crowd. So it's nice to have you here. Today, I'm going to try and answer a question I see Paul saying. If you're not saved by circumcision, then why is it a thing? And we're going to look at that. I'm going to do my best to answer that. I'm not sure I'm going to do it brilliantly, but I'm going to give it a try. But along the way, I'm going to try and also focus on how we are saved. And we'll be doing a lot of work in Romans 4 and in Hebrews 11, because Abraham is the central character of this today. And so with that, I've turned to some of my old buddies. They don't know me, I know them. I've enjoyed their work for a long time, and I'm going to put a video on the screen. This is an 8-9 minute video, but it's going to set up everything that we're going to share. So I'm going to play that now and hope that it starts and works and that you can hear it. So it's got the visual. In a second, we'll know if we can hear it. It's there. Does it go up louder?
Ishmael!
There we go.
Ishmael, boy! Yeah, I'm talking to you, son. There ain't nobody else out there, is there? Ishmael, it's time to get in and help your mother with dinner. Son, don't sass me. I'm not in the mood for it. It's time to get in and help your mother with dinner. We got important company coming. Son, don't ride that. That's going to be dinner. It gets them all riled up, son. They're real tough to eat. We'll be chewing till Tuesday. Now get in there and help your mother. He kicked her right out, didn't he? Rub it, maybe it'll feel better next week. Now get in there and help your mother. Thank you, son. There we go. Thank you, son. Always.
Greetings. I am Gabriel.
Boy, you're a big fella. Have a seat right over here. Yes, indeed. Always an honor. Always an honor. Take a look. Ishmael! Yeah, bring this fella something to drink here. It's my son Ishmael. Yeah, he's kind of wild, but he's a good boy. Yeah, he just turned 13. You know how they are. Oh. Yeah. Hello, my name is Ishmael. Boy, I never get tired of hearing that. Yeah. Are you sure I can't get you something that's going to be a little while before dinner? I know it's hot out here.
No, I'm fine. You know, I just came through your nephew Lott's place over in the Jordan Valley. It's cooler there. There's a river flowing through.
Water's overrated. Yeah. Now the desert, son. That will make you tough.
That's why you chose this spot. I mean, you could have had any place you wanted. Why'd you give Lott first pick?
It was reverse psychology. I never thought he'd take it.
Oh.
Besides, I was never much for them cities he's got over there. No, Sodom stinks. Gomorrah's overcrowded. I gotta have
Room to roam.
room to move.
You're a rambling guy.
I'm a rolling stone.
Yeah.
So, what can I do you for? What'd you say your name was?
Gabriel. I am Gabriel.
Abel. Good to see you. So, Gabe. Can I call you Gabe?
Can I call you Abe?
Well, that'd be Gabe and Abe, wouldn't it? Gabe and Abe and Abe and Gabe.
Couple of rambling.
Rolling Stones.
Yeah, that's us.
Gabe and Abe. Yeah. That's not a pun, is it?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
That's good. Gabe, when you's coming in,
Yeah.
did you notice the altar I put up out there? Keeping my side of the bargain. See, everywhere I go, I am putting up one of them altars. If it's one thing I got out here, son, it's rocks.
Yes. Which brings me to this. And this is from, let's see here. As a new sign of the covenant, you are to take the foreskin of each male member.
Take it where?
off. As a new sign of this covenant, you are to take the foreskin of each male member of each household off.
Let me see that.
There's a diagram right there. That's going to sting a little. Yeah.
He sure has got a funny sense of humor, doesn't he?
Yeah. He wants to start with you.
That's great. That's just great. Well, it appears that I gotta give something up. What's in it for me here, son?
That's also why I'm here, Abraham.
Boy, I'm glad there's another reason.
Well, I've come today to tell you that the Lord will keep his promise to you. You will have a son.
Okay, we already got a son. It's Ishmael. I talked about him when you was coming in. He's kind of wild, but he's a good boy.
Yeah, I know, but you'll have another son.
Gabe, how in the world am I gonna... Oh, I see. Yeah, another wife. Yeah.
No, you and Sarah.
Sarah.
Yes, you and Sarah together will have a son. It will be through her that the nations will rise up.
You got me. You got the old sheep herder. Pooh. Me and Sarah. That's a good one.
Oh, no, Abram, the Lord meant what he said.
Gabe, she's 90. I'm going to go slow for you here now, son. See, now there's a time that sort of thing can happen. Sarah, God bless her, she's done past it. She's too old. Now me, maybe I'm about as fertile as Lot's back 40, son, but you know, I can't do by myself. It takes two. There you go.
I understand the process. Nonetheless, you and Sarah together will have a son.
Well, you're not kidding me.
No, I'm not.
Another son. Tell me about it.
Well, let's see, here is his name is to be Isaac, which means he laughs. Right. And he'll be the spitting image of you.
So be handsome, little bugger.
He'll be the spitting image of you.
Wait. What about Ishmael?
No,
What do you mean?
the promise is not for him.
All right, that's it. No deal.
Oh, but you can't do that.
Well, Gabe, it appears that I just did.
It's the Lord you're dealing with.
As I recall, he called me. I did not call him.
Stay right here. There must be something about that in here. See, here. Ishmael also will be blessed. His descendants too will become a great nation.
He would do that. Yes. Boy's kind of wild.
I know, you said.
He's my son, Gabe.
He also will be exceedingly fruitful, but live at odds with his kin.
Yeah, that would be Ishmael, all right.
Come here, Abraham.
It's Abram.
Come here, Abraham, father of many nations. Look to the heavens. Stars. Can you count them?
That's a lot of stars up there, son.
So shall your descendants be.
Oh, my. All those stars. Yeah. I guess it might take two sons, yeah. Sarah! Never mind dinner!
So many stars. So many unknown patterns. So
If you read that passage in Scripture, you'll wonder why it was Gabriel and not the Lord himself. But the conversation with a little bit of flour is pretty good. I am one of those stars. Not because I was born into the Jewish nation, but because I choose Jesus. I choose the Son of God. I choose the Son of Man. And I follow Jesus by faith. I do not rely on the law. Now, admittedly, at first, when I follow Jesus by faith, I have come to realize that faith that I thought I had was faith in me, faith in my ability, my following, hey, I can see God from here. That worked for a while. I was part of a good church. My friends were part of this. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be liked. And hey, my faith seemed to get most of that for me. But faith in me or my following ability, like, hey, God, here I am. Watch me follow, only gets you so far. Jesus' disciples are famous for dropping everything and following Jesus. And I love those stories where that happens. And I love the background that we have learned over time that it explains the dynamics of this. But Peter and Andrew had some experience already with John the Baptist when Jesus shows up and they haven't caught anything that night. Peter and Andrew could have put faith in themselves. Hey, Jesus, hi, good to see you. Lovely idea you've got there, but we're going home to nap now. We know we need our sleep. And then tomorrow night we will try again. But Jesus says, go out now. Put your nets down on the other side. So Peter and Andrew in that moment had to have faith in Jesus. They were following what he said, but their faith was not in themselves. Their faith was in this Jesus standing there right in front of them. And when their boats are filled with fish, Jesus says, I will make you fishers of men. Drop your nets. Come follow me. And I don't think they had a clue what they were getting into. But through their faith, they certainly didn't understand Jesus at this point. But their faith left their boats, in Peter's case, his family behind, and they follow Jesus. James and John, I kind of view that just down the lake a little bit. Taking care of the family business with dad. If faith in themselves, they would have been good boys. They would have carried on with that, the odd argument here and there. But when Zebedee couldn't go out fishing anymore, they'd carry on the family business. That's how it works. They had to go help Peter and Andrew. And Jesus says to James and John, drop your nets, come follow me. And I don't think James and John had any idea what they were getting themselves in for, but they decided through faith to say, well, this guy's got something. I'm going to follow him. Now, Matthew had it all worked out. If you can't beat them, join them. The rest of his country people are all moaning about the Romans this, Romans that, but not Matthew. He'd figured out the system. He had all sorts of faith in himself, and he'd worked it out, and he got rich. Jesus comes along. Oh, Matthew, this is not what you're called for. Come, follow me. And Matthew gives up his wealth. We've been talking this week about the rich young ruler. Matthew did it and followed Jesus. Now, I understand that the disciples had somebody to look at, somebody that exuded assurance, peace, God's Son. It might not have been their image of God's son, but there was something there, and they followed something. But now I want to go to Abraham. What in the world did Abraham see that made him go, I'm going to follow you? Was it a voice? Was it a voice in his head? Was it an audible voice? Did someone else hear it? Did he get confirmation somewhere? But it's like, Abraham, you are going to leave this place. Come, and I'm going to take you to a place where it's all going to be yours. All Abraham had was a promise. And Abraham decided that he believed the promise and so followed God. And we're told from Paul that he followed God by faith. Romans 4:1. Abraham, and I'm going to be in Romans 4 and Hebrews 11 if you want to follow along in your Bibles. Romans 4:1. Abraham was, humanly speaking, the founder of our Jewish nation. What did he discover about being made right with God? Now, Paul is trying to teach Christian followers what it means to walk by faith, follow Jesus by faith. That keeping the law is not what's going to save you. Being in relationship with Jesus is what's going to save you. That's what Paul is trying to explain here. And so he's turning to the founder of the Jewish religion. He's trying to get credibility with his audience. So that's verse 1, verse 2 and 3. If Abraham's good deeds made him acceptable to God, he would have had something to boast about. But that is not God's way. For the scriptures tell us, Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his faith. Faith is going to take central stage to what we're looking at today. And when we get to verse 9, Paul asks one of his questions. And we're looking at Paul's questions in Romans for a little while here. Paul doesn't ask the questions because he doesn't know the answer. It's just his literary style. He is predicting that followers of Jesus, hearing things about the gospel, are going to have some questions. Paul thinks he's figured out what those questions are going to be, and so he asks them for us because we were not there. This blessing that Paul is talking about here in this part of Romans, the blessing that the Abraham skip just talked about, the question comes up, this is a wonderful blessing, is it for Jews only? Or can we Gentiles get in on it? And if we Gentiles can get in on it, do we have to, And here is Paul's answer. Kind of missed a screen there. For this, I'm going to go to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 is the faith chapter. Paul, or whoever wrote Hebrews, goes through the Old Testament showing how people by faith. See, faith is not just a New Testament thing. The author of Hebrews is leaning back into the Old Testament stories to show the role of faith there. So we've talked about Abel, Enoch, Noah. Now in this chapter we get to Abraham. And it was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as in his inheritance. Abraham went without knowing where he was going. And even when he reached the land that God promised him, he lived there by faith. For he was a foreigner living in tents. And so did Isaac, and so did Jacob, who inherited the same promise. So Abraham, by faith, followed the promise, but he did not experience the result of this promise. Even when he got to the promised land, he's still living in tents. No palace. He's not living as a king. He's living in a tent. So how did this happen? Another one of Paul's questions. If Abraham was made righteous not by circumcision, but by faith, how did that faith make him righteous? Because as Paul points out, Abraham was declared righteous before circumcision. Paul makes it clear in chapter 4, verse 11. We are counted as righteous, because of our faith, but only if we have the same kind of faith that Abraham had. It's not faith in ourselves, not faith in our ability to keep the law, not faith in our ability to follow, but faith in Jesus and what Jesus has done for us. We, through faith, believe the promise. Now, while I'm here in Hebrews, I want to do the next couple of verses, because Abraham was confidently looking forward to a city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. Have you ever had a time in your life where life is rough, but you believe the promise? You keep your faith in God because you know one day it will get better. That was Abraham. But all these people, Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, all died still believing what God had promised them, even though they were living in tents. The promise had not fully been revealed or given yet. But Abraham keeps the faith. So back to Romans 4, Romans 4:13. This is where we start our scripture reading. Clearly. This is Paul's way of saying, duh. Do you guys not get this yet? Clearly, God's promise to give the whole earth to Abraham and his descendants was based not on obedience to God's law, but on a right relationship with God that comes by faith. Another really good verse right there. One worth remembering and going back to when we need to. And then we get to Romans 4:14 to 15. If God's promise to Abraham, to Paul, to you, to me, is only for those who obey the law, then faith is not necessary and it is pointless. For the law always brings punishment on those who try to obey it. The only way to avoid breaking the law is to have no law. And that is certainly how part of the world deals with the problem. But we are invited to exercise our faith in God's promise. So, I have some questions of my own. It gets really hard when we start getting down to nitty-gritty here, because I think most of us would reject works as a means of salvation and would agree, reading these scriptures and the upbringing we've had, that faith is our doorway into salvation. Because I want to reject works. I've been in communities where works have been valued. And when you read Romans, I'm on the faith side. But it seems that somewhere along the line we get to prove our faith by our works. And that starts getting a little bit messy. It turns out that there's kind of a fine line between faith and works. It's really easy to take faith in the promise and turn that into, yeah, but my faith is better than your faith. And my faith gets to do this. And look at you guys, you're not even at this stage yet. That happens really easily in religious society. So I want to introduce you to something. Some of you may have heard of it, but I want to introduce you to the Sabbath. It's in Scripture. If you read your Bible, you'll find it there. Some of you may have heard of this. And I want to present to you the Sabbath, which is part of the Ten Commandments, part of the creation story, part of the Jesus story. Sabbath seems to be present in his death and resurrection. Sabbath is sort of a theme woven throughout the scriptures. How does the Sabbath that is described by the law differ to a Sabbath described by faith? Because sometimes it's not always easy to tell the difference, and even though I'm going to try and explain it here with box 1 and box 2, I don't have any pretense that you're going to leave this room having totally got that down, but let me at least give a little bit of a whirl of this. So, Sabbath. As a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, I really believe one of the big reasons that holds Seventh-day Adventists together is not our state of the dead theory or our health message, though that's part of it, but the one thing that kind of holds us together is the Sabbath. And I think one of the reasons we're scared to sort of put the law over there and focus on faith in Jesus is that we're worried that if we give up the law, we might have to give up the Sabbath, which is simply not true. Yes, the Sabbath is in the Ten Commandments. It's in a lot of other places as well. So I have decided that I would like to keep the Sabbath. I see it as a blessing. I see it as part of this relationship, as part of this promise that God has given me. So, I'm all for it. I want to participate in Sabbath. I take my seventh day rest because I'm connected with Jesus and I get to spend some time with him, and my faith is in him. I know he's going to do the saving part. I'm just following him. So his day, because we're hanging out together, his day is my day. And I'm going to spend it with him. I've got 6 days to get all of my work done. And even there, I trust him to be with me and to guide me. But when these 6 days are done, I get to spend the 7th with him. It's like, if I could speak to the guys for a second, just because I relate there a bit more. You go to work at 8:30, you come home at 5:30. And you work to put food on the table to protect your family. But when you get home, you actually get to spend time with your family. I think that's what the Sabbath is about. This world is hard work. Food doesn't automatically appear on the table. We have to work for it. We have to earn it. But Jesus has built in a time where we can put that work aside and enjoy the fruits of our labor. That's the kind of God we follow. That's my Sabbath. Or, I went backwards. Or, if I keep the Sabbath, God will bless me. He will feel better towards me, so I'll get his smile and not his frown. Now, Isaiah 58 has a verse that we read like this. If I participate in the Sabbath and call it a delight, God will open up the blessings for me. And I agree with it. I think that's there. I don't think that's error. But if I do this, I'm going to get that, is not the approach that God calls us to. He wants to hang out with us. He doesn't want to come and grab and then go and leave. Like, hey, I did it. Now give me. It's a different way of life. And Paul wants Jesus' followers to look past that and to live in relationship with God. If you can't tell the difference between these two, we'll just take that as a sign that there's a lot of Romans left yet to read. And I would encourage that for you. So a couple questions for you here. I know that Seventh-day Adventist law is a big deal for us. And the reason I'm wanting this series and to preach this way is because I have that following me. I have that baggage. And Paul wants us to let that go. He wants us to live free. So back to Abraham. did Abraham's circumcision save him? Now, this is not a trick question. The story in Genesis, what we read in Hebrews, what we've read in Romans so far, should make this a pretty straightforward question to answer. According to Scripture, his circumcision absolutely did not save Abraham. That's a big no. Next question. Did Abraham's journey save him? And I'm talking about God called him out of Ur and sent him to the promised land. Did Abraham deciding, I'm going to do that? Did Abraham's decision to go, I like this promise, I believe this promise, I'm going to go, did that save him? Now, you're right, I don't think it saved him. We're tempted to start thinking along the lines of, what if he didn't go? So next question. Did Abraham's choosing the lesser land, giving the fertile land near the cities to Lot, and keeping the hard mountain land for himself, did that save him? Now you're following, you're tracking well, because I can hear the no, I see the shakings of the head. No. But we've heard it, and we know this, that if you put yourself near sin, you might start sinning. So put yourself away from sin and you won't be tempted as much. I got news for you, just in case this is news for you, but the devil doesn't go, the city limits, I can't go any further. I don't know what to do with those country folk. I have no temptations for them. No. Abraham didn't get saved by that choice. I still think it was a good choice. That's not where his salvation came from. And just to make this abundantly clear, I have one more question here. Did Abraham's actions in Egypt with his wife, sister, take his salvation away? No. Because on the other places, in the first three questions, he did the right thing. He made the right choice. On this one, he made the wrong choice. It's like he didn't move from Ur. It's like he did take the fertile place. He did something he was not supposed to do. He lied, deceived. But God did not take his salvation away. There were consequences and things had to be cleaned up, but God's there for that. That's what people in a relationship do. You spilt the milk, you clean it up. That's not how God operates. When we make good choices and when we make bad choices, our God's there. He's still our God. We're still in relationship with him. Abraham received the promise of God by believing God to give him that promise. Romans 4:16. This is God's free gift to us, and we are certain to receive this gift, whether or not we live according to the law of Moses. Now, some of you are like, oh boy, I wish the pastor would not use the New Living Translation. These paraphrases make Christianity sound way too easy. Some of you are going to need to read this in the King James Version. So here it is. Therefore. Remember, the therefore is always an important part because of what Christ has done. Therefore, it is of faith that it might be by grace, to the end the promise might be sure to all the seed. Remember, we're talking about Abraham's seed, Abraham's offspring. Isaac, Ishmael. Is the promise just for Isaac, or is the promise for Ishmael too? To all the seed, not to that only which is of the law, but to that also which is of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. Now, maybe you're not a New Living Translation person, and maybe the King James Version is just a little bit too much. You want some modern English, but you want a good, decent word-for-word translation. I got one of those too, the New Revised Standard Version. This is my study Bible translation. For this reason, the therefore, everything that has been described, for this reason, it depends on faith. Salvation in Jesus depends on faith. In order that the promise may rest on grace and be guaranteed to all his descendants, not only the adherents of the law, but also to those who share the faith of Abraham. I know there's at least one person here that likes the message, so I put that one up too. It's a little bit longer than all the others because the message author wants to make sure you get it. This is why the fulfillment of God's promise depends entirely on trusting God and his way and then simply embracing him and what he does. God's promise arrives as a pure gift. That's the only way everyone can be sure to get in on it. Those who keep the religious traditions and those who have never heard of them. For Abraham is the father of us all. He is not our racial father. That's reading the story backwards. He is our faith father. One more translation. I used to be like, why don't they just literally translate the Greek into English? Just like word for word. Well, someone's tried. It makes some really hard reading. But because of this, it is of faith that may be according to grace. I've lost it. Let me read back up here again. For the promise being sure to all the seed, not to that which is of the law only, but also to that which is of the faith of Abraham. Do you want the faith of Abraham? To believe the promise? You're prepared to stay in tents while the mansion gets built? You will walk this world in the tracks of Jesus. You'll go where Jesus went. You'll do what Jesus does. You're going to hang out with Jesus. Some have a really hard time with this. I know some people, don't ask me how, but we manage to get really self-righteous about our faith. We get so proud that our understanding of faith, of this great truth of grace, is better than anybody else's. If they really understood it, then their faith would be like mine. And that's unfortunate. Sometimes when we realize the law won't save us and we sort of focus faith and God's calling on us, we focus it. It's really easy. You know when you focus manually, you get that sweet spot, but if you keep going, it gets out of focus again. If you're downstairs on Wednesday nights, you'll see me do that regularly because my eyes can't tell when it's focused. But we do that. Sometimes we just go straight through truth and just keep going. By the way, if you're still thinking that you might be able to make it by the law, not only do you need to get circumcised, but you also need to become Jewish somehow. So I'm going to go the grace, faith route. It's like me, a guy born in Australia to English parents, spending some of my life in Sierra Leone, West Africa. I've lived in Italy. Moved to the United States, lived in Maryland, Illinois, California before coming to South Dakota, saying, hey, I'm South Dakotan now. Amen. I live here. I have bought a coat. I have South Dakotan blood flowing through me. My next car is even going to be a pickup. I belong here. I am here. My ancestors died. Well, that might not be true. I know that this is kombucha. No, still got some California in me. Is that, how do you say that? Kuchan? Kuchen, thank you. It's good. I have learned to appreciate that. I am clearly not South Dakotan in the sense that I was born and raised and my ancestors grew up here. I have the driver's license. I'd say I pay my South Dakotan taxes, but what a great state. But I have been welcomed here by you. I chose to come here, and you chose to welcome me. And by the way, the more I hang out with you, the more South Dakotan I become. There was no weather report on the midweek blessing when I was living in California. That's all here. One of the most hospitable places I have ever been was in Albania. I went to see this guy after church. New church, country had just fallen from communism. But there was this guy who had spent years in a labor camp, but he'd found Jesus on his release. Gotten married, had a little baby girl. Lived in an apartment room that was smaller than this stage, with his wife, his daughter, and his mother. He'd been sent to the labor camp because he had decided in the middle of communism he couldn't stand it anymore, and he was a strong guy. So he and his brother decided to swim from Albania to Italy across the Adriatic. So many people were trying this that the state was patrolling the ocean waters by the coast. And he got picked up and sent to a labor camp. He said, I never knew what happened to my brother. I'm guessing he wasn't picked up, and he probably didn't make it. And now I'm in his house. The only way he knows me is that I represent this faith that he has decided to buy into and practice and live. And I showed up at his church as a 22-year-old, 23 years old. There I am. As was their custom, they're going to make their visitors feel welcome. And he went out and bought a 2-liter bottle of pop, soda, what do we call it? Any of those? See, I'm from South Dakota. That 2-liter bottle of soda cost him what he earned in a month. How do you drink something that someone has spent a month's salary on? How do you drink that? When I get halfway through one of those, I'm convicted I shouldn't be drinking that and throw the rest away. Well, I like to think so. My translator's like, you got to drink that. I can't drink that. He's like, you got to drink that. Someone spends a month's salary on your hospitality, and you go, no. You got to drink that. And every time he took a sip, he topped it up. Now, your Jesus, who calls you, gives you everything. Everything. And his month's salary is more than you could ever imagine. And he offers it to you. Some of us are like, oh, it's too much. I'm going to go and keep some laws over here. I'll find my own way home. What did I do? I've given it to you. So why did God circumcise Abraham? What's the deal with that? We are told in Scripture that it was a sign. Now, a couple weeks ago, I talked about the 10 Commandments that are out in the lobby. It's the first thing on the wall as you come in through the door. And I would like to talk about how we could reveal what Jesus has done as part of our communication in the lobby. But here's the thing. I know why it's there. Maybe some of you put it up, so I'm speculating, but I think I know why it's there. It's a sign. We value this. We can't wait for a time when everybody just lives like this. And we don't have to worry about murderers and cheaters and liars and this day and that day. And we don't have to worry about that. This is a sign. That is a sign right there of what we value. And I get that. It's why some people will tattoo a cross onto them or put a cross around their neck on a chain. Now, I've met people who have cross tattoos on them and who wear a cross on a neck around a chain. I have met them, and you know what? Some of them, they do not represent Jesus very well. But it's a sign. I might make mistakes. I didn't have the start you had, Stephen. I didn't have the upbringing you have. I didn't get to go to a religious school like you went to. But I figured out God's promised me some stuff. And through faith, I accept that promise. And this cross tattooed here, this cross around my neck, it's a sign. I'm his and he's mine. I may not always live up to what he calls me to do. But be very careful when you see someone with a cross or a cross and go, yeah, they're not living up to it very well. Be very careful being that person. It's a sign. In the secular world, it's like someone from Green Bay going to a football match. And they wear green and gold. It's a sign. And those Wisconsin people could be in the middle of California watching the Rams versus the Giants, and they're still going to show up in their green and gold. It's a sign. These are my people. I believe the promise. It might not be the best promise to believe in, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's because when the devil shows up to you and says, you're not good enough to go to heaven, you've done some terrible things, you can point to Jesus and you can say, I'm with him. You got a problem with my behavior, take it up with him. Because I believe the promise. And I'm headed that way. It's why when I went to the Australian embassy to get a 3-month visa to visit Australia, and they asked me in the interview, Stephen, what country were you born in? And I said, well, actually, funny story, I was born in Australia. And they said, well, we can't give you a visa. We have to give you a passport. Did the passport make me Australian? No, I got the passport because I was already Australian. I just didn't know it yet. I'm a terrible Australian. When they put the meat on the Barbie, I think there's going to be some Barbie doll there. No, that's the barbecue. And I meet someone called Sheila, but her name is actually Jennifer. I don't understand that. But in Australia, that would perfectly make sense. When Australia plays England at cricket, I'm rooting for England with my Australian passport. When I moved here, did I tell you I was Australian? No, I told you I was English. But I got the Australian passport. So when I go to Australia, I left when I was 4 years old. When I went back at 22, and I went up to the passport control person, and I went with my passport, he didn't go, you've been gone a long time. Where you been? What you been doing? Rooting for England, I hear. You're a vegetarian? No. The guy looked at my passport, saw that I'd been gone 18 years as a 22-year-old. He said, "Crikey, mate, welcome back." That's your Jesus. Where you've been, what you've wandered into, some of the stupid stuff you've done. Believe the promise. Live in relationship with him, and he will take care of you. Your faith will take you home. Your faith in Jesus will take you home. Just a couple more minutes. Let's watch this together. Oh, is there sound?
Next. File, please. Some lying, some stealing, and some acts of kindness here and there.
I tried to live a good life.
Well, let's see how good. This way. Next. File, please.
Okay, I admit it. I did a lot of bad things.
Yes, I see.
But I've done good things too, to offset the bad things. Like one time I cheated on a test, but then I cleaned up trash in the park. That should balance out, right?
Let's find out. This way.
That should have balanced out, right? It should have balanced out.
Next. File, please. Impressive.
Oh yeah, I devoted my entire life to make this world a better place. I dug wells in Africa, I donated blood every month, and I ran an orphanage in India. I just wish I could have done more.
And is this your subscription?
I only read the articles. I only read the articles. I only read the articles.
Next.
My mom goes to church.
I was baptized as a baby?
Take American Express, right?
Next. File, please. Whoa. Somebody's been busy. Well, let's get this over with. Sorry, I didn't know he was with you. Okay, step on the scale. Not you. Him.
Hey, wait a minute. That is totally not fair.
That's why it's called grace. Next.
If you are struggling with the concept of this, if you have what I call the older brother syndrome, which is easy to have, spend some time in Romans. Try and understand what it is God is offering you and calling you for.